My 6-year-old daughter flinched when I raised my hand for a high five, and my son started messaging his mom every hour during our visits. That was the beginning. What I didn't know yet was that my best friend of 15 years, Jason, was spending nights at my ex-wife's house while her sorority sister, a therapist, was coaching my kids on how to convince a judge I had touched them inappropriately. I remember opening the door, excited to have them for the weekend. My daughter shrank back when I held out my hand to high-five her. She didn't just pull away, she covered her head and ducked. My stomach dropped. I tried to laugh it off as a weird joke, maybe something silly she picked up at school, but then my 7-year-old son spent the entire weekend sitting just far enough that I couldn't reach him. When I brought it up with my ex, she brushed it off with a laugh. They're just being goofy. You know how our kids are. But something was off. My daughter refused to unpack her things. My son checked in with her every hour on the dot. We're okay, as if he had to prove they were still alive. When I tucked them in, they lay stiff as boards until I left the room. One morning, I woke up to them fully dressed, bags packed, standing by the door. Mom says we need to be back by noon. It was 7 a.m. Next time they came over, they didn't call me Dad. They used my first name. That's when I knew something serious was going on. The following Tuesday, trying to reconnect, I asked my son how his piano lessons were going. He looked confused. Piano? We don't take Crack. My daughter elbowed him hard in the ribs. His face changed instantly. Oh, yeah, piano, I like piano. It's good. That night, I called my ex. Noah seemed confused about piano today, I said. What? They're just tired, she snapped. Stop being paranoid. They're growing up. Give them space. She hung up before I could say anything else. My gut screamed something wasn't right. I started digging. She'd said the kids had been in piano for 10 weeks. They'd even told me what songs they were learning. So I called the piano teacher. I'm sorry, she said. I don't have any students by those names. I froze. That's when something odd happened. At the time, it felt small, but looking back, it was huge. I called Jason, my best friend, for a favor. I was running late for a work meeting and asked if he could pick up the kids. There was a long silence. Then he said, maybe it's better if their mom keeps them today, with how they've been acting and all. I didn't think much of it then. I kept looking for clues, trying to find anything suspicious. I called the school to confirm pickup times, checked the shared family calendar. I even considered hiding audio recorders in their backpacks. Then I found it, a charge to our old joint account, the safety net one we hadn't touched in years, a weekly charge, every Tuesday, for Riverwood Child Therapy. I had joint legal custody. Legally, I had to be informed of any medical treatment. I had to sign consent forms. I hadn't signed anything. I'd never even heard of that place. I brought it up to Jason while he was over watching football. There's a weekly therapy charge I didn't know about, I said. He didn't look at me, didn't ask a single question. Maybe she forgot to tell you, he muttered. I wouldn't push it. If you call, you'll look like the crazy ex. But I called. The receptionist was warm and talkative. Yes, every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Dr. Lauren works with them. She's amazing. I asked a few casual questions, and the receptionist mentioned something interesting. Dr. Lauren was in the same college sorority as my ex-wife. That was all I needed. I looked her up. Her website listed her as a child psychologist specializing in recovered memory therapy and custody evaluations. Then I found her personal social media. There she was, smiling at my ex-wife's birthday party just 2 months ago. Another photo at a barbecue, and in the background, arm around my ex's shoulders, Jason. My best friend, Jason. My chest tightened. I kept scrolling. There he was again, at my daughter's dance recital. One I hadn't even been told about. Jason at Easter dinner at my ex's place. Jason at a family pool day. The photos stretched back months right around when the kids started acting strangely. That weekend, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. After dinner, I sat down on the living room floor with my kids, keeping my voice soft and steady. Hey, can we talk for a bit? They went still. My son's lips trembled. I asked gently worded questions, gave them space, let the silence work. It took nearly an hour before they said anything. Dr. Lauren says you did bad things to us, my son whispered, but our brains made us forget to protect us. My daughter nodded, eyes welling up. She shows us dolls and asks if you touch us like this. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I swallowed and asked, "Is everything okay at Mommy's house?" They looked at each other, pure panic. My daughter started sobbing. "We can't talk about Mom's friend. You'll get mad. He's why we have bruises." My son tried to stop her. "Don't." But it was too late. Their faces drained of color. It was like they realized they'd said something they weren't supposed to. The next morning, 7:00 a.m., there was a knock on the door. A process server handed me a stack of papers. Emergency custody modification. My ex was claiming the kids had disclosed months of abuse in therapy. She was asking the court to reduce my visits to supervised only pending a full psych evaluation. My phone buzzed with a message from Jason. "Just heard about the papers. Maybe it's for the best, bro." At the bottom of the filing was a supporting statement from a concerned family friend who has witnessed troubling interactions. It was signed by Jason. I called my lawyer immediately. She picked up on the third ring. Catherine Chen speaking. I launched into everything, the therapy I never knew about, the false accusations, Jason's betrayal, the court documents. She didn't interrupt, just made the occasional sound to show she was tracking. When I finally finished, she exhaled slowly. "First things first, document everything. Every message, every email, every interaction with your children. Take pictures of any bruises they mentioned. We need to file a response immediately." I grabbed a pen, hands shaking as I jotted down her instructions. "The court will likely order a custody evaluation," she continued. "Given that a therapist is already involved, albeit one with glaring conflicts of interest, we need to be very strategic. Can you get me the exact dates and times of these sessions?" I pulled up the bank records on my laptop. "Every Tuesday at 4 p.m. for the past 10 weeks. Charges are still active." "Good. Did the receptionist give you the therapist's full name?" "Dr. Sarah Winters." "I found her professional bio and her link to my ex through social media." Catherine made a note. "That sorority connection completely compromises her credibility. No ethical therapist would treat children while being personally close with one of the parents. We'll file a complaint with the licensing board." My doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole. Mrs. Han, my elderly neighbor, stood there holding a casserole dish. I opened the door slightly. "Hi, Mrs. Han." She looked at me with concern. "I saw the little ones leaving so early yesterday. Everything all right?" I forced a small smile, took the dish. "Just some schedule stuff. Thank you for this." Once I got back to the call, I apologized. "Sorry, my neighbor." "No problem," Catherine said. "Now about Jason. How long have you known him?" 15 years, since college." The words felt like glass in my mouth. "And you had no idea about him and your ex?" I thought back missed plans, vague excuses, the distance I kept chalking up to work stress. The signs had been there, I just hadn't wanted to see them. Catherine's typing echoed in the background. "We'll subpoena his phone records if we need to. For now, collect everything. Screenshots, social posts, financial records, anything that shows you've been a present, responsible father." I spent the next 3 hours gathering at all photos from the shared cloud drive showing me at school events, birthday parties, bedtime. I printed out old emails with my ex about schedules, proof that I'd never missed a visit. I even dug up old videos, my kids laughing, playing, chasing each other around the yard during our weekends. They looked comfortable, happy, safe, proof of what used to be. Then the doorbell rang again. This time I checked the security camera before answering. 2 uniformed police officers stood on my porch. My chest tightened. I opened the door slowly. "We're here for a welfare check," said the taller one. "There was a report of concerning behavior involving children at this address." I kept my tone even. "My kids aren't here, they're with their mother." They exchanged a glance. "Mind if we come in and ask you a few questions?" I knew my rights, but I also knew that saying no would only raise suspicions. "Of course." They stepped into the house, taking in the living room baskets of toys, finger-painted artwork taped to the fridge, cabinet safety locks still in place. The shorter officer picked up a framed picture of me pushing my kids on swings. "Nice family," he said. "Thank you," I replied. I gave them a quick, emotionless summary of the custody arrangement. They asked the usual questions: where the kids slept, what their routine looked like, any behavioral red flags. I answered plainly. I showed them the bedroom 2 twin beds, clothes folded neatly in the dresser, shelves filled with bedtime books, puzzles, games. "Looks like a good setup," said the taller one. "We'll file our report." After they left, I stood frozen in the hallway. The timing of everything was too neat. Jason casually suggesting the kids stay with their mom. The therapy bills hitting a long-forgotten joint account. That overly friendly receptionist dropping the sorority link. Now a welfare check? I called Catherine immediately. "The police just left. Welfare check." "She's escalating," Catherine said grimly. "But honestly, this helps us. The report will reflect a safe, well-maintained home. That contradicts her story." "Did you get names and badge numbers?" "Officers Martinez and Johnson," I told her. "Perfect. I'll request their report for our court response. Now let's go over next steps." She outlined it clearly. First, we'd file a formal response to the emergency motion complete with evidence of Dr. Lauren's conflict of interest and the fact I was never notified of therapy, violating the custody agreement. Second, we'd request a neutral, independent custody evaluator. Third, we'd subpoena the therapy records. "What about the bruises?" I asked, my voice catching. "Write down everything they told you, word for word while it's fresh. If they ever show visible marks, photograph them. We may need to request a medical examination." I thought of my son's trembling voice, my daughter sobbing, the panic in their eyes when they mentioned Mom's friend. My fists clenched involuntarily. "One more thing," Catherine said. "No direct contact with Jason or your ex. None. Only through your attorney or the co-parenting app. They're baiting you. Don't give them material to twist." After the call, I sat in my kids' room. My daughter's favorite stuffed elephant lay where she left it. My son's Lego spaceship sat half-built on his desk. The silence was brutal. I started typing, just as Catherine instructed. Every word they'd said about Dr. Lauren, the dolls, the so-called bad things I'd done. The way they were told, their brains protected them by forgetting. My hands shook when I reached the part about the bruises. "And Mom's friend." Then my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. It was a photo. My kids at the park. Jason was pushing them on the swings. The timestamp said it was taken less than an hour ago, during what should have been school. Another text followed. "They're having such a great time with Uncle Jason. He's so good with them." I felt my skin crawl. Screenshot. Forwarded it to Catherine. Her reply came instantly. "Save everything. This is harassment. They're trying to get a reaction." The next few days passed in a fog. Catherine filed our response. I tried to focus at work while my world disintegrated. My coworkers noticed, asked if I was okay. I lied and said I was just tired. Every night I lay awake, replaying everything, every missed red flag with Jason, every shady detail I brushed off. Then came Thursday. I knew my kids had therapy that afternoon. At 3:45, I parked across the street from the office building, far enough to avoid notice but close enough to see. At 3:55, my ex pulled up. I watched them get out my daughter holding tightly to her brother's hand. They looked so small. I took pictures from my car, documentation of a session I had never once been informed about. An hour later, they came out. My son's face was wet with tears, and my daughter looked empty, staring at the sidewalk like it had all the answers. They didn't speak, they didn't smile, just trudged along beside their mother's car. That evening, Catherine called. "The judge granted our request for an expedited hearing. It's set for Monday," she said. "We'll present evidence of the therapist's conflict of interest and ask the court to enforce joint legal custody immediately." "What about the kids? Will they have to testify?" "Not at this one. This is just about the emergency motion. The full custody evaluation will come later." I spent the entire weekend preparing. I gathered every piece of documentation, sorting it into clearly labeled folders, bank statements, showing the unauthorized therapy charges, screenshots of Dr. Lauren's social media ties to my ex, photos of Jason at family events I hadn't been told about. I included texts showing my repeated efforts to communicate about the kids. Sunday night, I stood in the kitchen, staring blankly at the casserole dish Mrs. Hahn had brought earlier in the week. I hadn't touched it. My stomach was twisted into knots. Then my phone rang. The caller ID showed my daughter's tablet. "Daddy." Her voice was a whisper, barely audible. Sweetheart, are you okay? Mom's in the shower. Jake wanted me to call. There was shuffling, then my son came on the line. Dad, we don't want to go to Dr. Lauren anymore. She makes us say things that aren't true. My heart pounded. It's okay, buddy. Can you tell me what kind of things? She says you did bad stuff. And when we say you didn't, she says our brains are hiding it from us. She made me practice telling the judge. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone's voice recorder. Is it okay if I record this so I can remember everything you're telling me? Okay. His voice was barely more than a breath. What did she make you practice? She said to say you hit us and touched us in bad places. He paused. But you never did that, Daddy. You never did. My daughter's voice returned, quiet and scared. Mom's friend is mean. He hurt Jake's arm when Jake said he missed you. I swallowed hard. Which friend, honey? Jason. He's always here now. He sleeps in Mom's room. In the background, I heard the bathroom door creak open. We have to go, my daughter whispered urgently. The line went dead. I immediately saved the recording and sent it to Catherine, along with a detailed transcript of what had just happened. Her response came fast. This changes everything. We're filing an emergency motion for immediate custody modification based on coaching and possible abuse. Can you be at my office by 7 a.m.? I'll be there, I said, already wide awake. I didn't sleep. Instead, I transcribed every word from the call, my hands trembling as I typed. The image of my son being forced to rehearse lies made me physically ill. Monday morning arrived too fast and not fast enough. I put on my best suit and drove through the pre-dawn quiet to Catherine's office. She was already there, printer humming, assembling pages into folders. I've drafted the emergency motion based on their statements, she said without even looking up. The coaching is serious enough on its own, but the mention of physical harm from Jason makes this urgent. We spent 2 hours reviewing documents, cross-checking dates, rehearsing what I might be asked. Stay calm, she said. No matter what accusations they throw at you, your ex will be there. Her lawyer will push hard. Jason might be there too, as the concerned family friend. Don't respond to anything they say. Let me handle it. I nodded, jaw clenched. The courthouse loomed ahead of us. My legs felt unsteady as we climbed the stone steps, but I forced myself to walk tall. Inside the family court waiting room, I spotted them instantly. My ex sat beside her lawyer, a woman in a sharp navy suit who looked like she hadn't smiled in years. Jason lounged nearby, scrolling casually through his phone like it was just another day. He looked up and our eyes met. He smirked, that same smug, arrogant smirk. Catherine's hand gripped my arm gently. Don't react, she whispered. He wants a show. Don't give him one. We took our seats. I arranged my folders with shaky hands, while Catherine opened her laptop and prepped her notes. The bailiff called the room to rise as Judge Patterson entered, stern, silver-haired, eyes like searchlights. We're here on an emergency motion regarding the Johnson children, she began, flipping through the thick stack of documents before her. I see we have competing motions. Ms. Chen, since your client is responding, we'll begin with the petitioner. My ex-wife's attorney rose, and just like that, she launched into a dramatic, practiced monologue, painting me as a monster and abuser who'd caused invisible scars, now finally exposed by the bravery of 2 innocent children. The therapist's report, the children's sudden behavioral changes, the supposed need for immediate protection, my ex's lawyer wove it all into a harrowing narrative, portraying me as someone dangerous while I sat in silence, my fingernails pressing into my palms beneath the table. The children's therapist, Dr. Sarah Winters, has documented multiple alarming disclosures, she said, lifting a document. We have her report indicating possible suppressed trauma. Judge Patterson's face remained unreadable as she flipped through the paperwork. Ms. Chen? She asked. Catherine stood, her tone calm but resolute. Your Honor, we have serious doubts regarding the credibility of Dr. Winters' report. We can demonstrate a clear conflict of interest that undermines her professional neutrality. She handed over screenshots Dr. Winters and my ex together at social events, photos from her birthday party, and proof of their long-standing sorority connection. The judge's brows lifted slightly as she examined the evidence. Furthermore, Catherine continued, my client was never informed of these therapy sessions, despite holding joint legal custody. He never gave consent. That is a direct violation of the custody agreement. Judge Patterson looked up sharply, eyes locking on my ex's lawyer. Can you explain why the father was not notified about the children's medical treatment? The attorney shifted in place, shuffling papers. It was an oversight, Your Honor. My client believed she had communicated it. An oversight that lasted 10 consecutive weeks? The judge asked, skepticism clear in her voice. Catherine didn't let the moment pass. Your Honor, we also have a recorded phone call between the children and their father from last night, indicating they were being coached to make false accusations. She requested permission to play the audio. My ex's face went ghostly as the courtroom filled with the sound of our children's voices. Jake, explaining how Dr. Lauren made him rehearse stories. My daughter, talking about Jason hurting her brother's arm when he said he missed me. That recording was made without my client's consent, my ex's attorney snapped. Catherine remained composed. The children initiated the call during my client's parenting time. He has every right to record conversations with his minor children. Judge Patterson raised a hand for silence. I've heard enough to rule on the emergency motion. All therapy sessions with Dr. Winters are to cease immediately. A court-appointed psychologist will conduct an independent custody evaluation. Relief washed through me, but she wasn't done. In the meantime, the current custody arrangement will remain in place. My ex's lawyer stood quickly. What about the children's safety? Mike's presence at these proceedings raises serious concerns. Is he simply a boyfriend or something more involved? The judge's eyes narrowed. Given what I've seen, I'm more concerned about potential coaching and reports of physical discipline from an unauthorized individual. She looked directly at me. Mr. Landon will retain his regular parenting time. If there are legitimate safety concerns, they must be addressed through the proper channels with an objective evaluator. She turned to both parties. I'm issuing a temporary order. No medical or therapeutic treatment for the minor children may occur without the written consent of both parents. Furthermore, there will be no overnight guests during parenting time until the custody evaluation is complete. Any violation will result in contempt proceedings. The relief was immediate, but Catherine wasn't finished. Your Honor, regarding the welfare check called on my client's home. Judge Patterson raised her hand again. I've reviewed the police report. Officers found a safe and appropriate home. That issue is closed. We began gathering our documents. As I zipped up my folder, I caught Jason's face. The smirk he wore earlier had vanished. His jaw was clenched, his stare sharp and bitter. My ex leaned close to her attorney, whispering furiously, occasionally shooting glares our way. Outside the courthouse, Catherine walked with me to my car. This was a strong first step, she said, but it's far from over. They'll regroup and try something else. Keep documenting everything. If the kids say anything more, write it down immediately. Record it if you can. What about the bruises? Jason grabbing Jake? The evaluator will look into it, she said. Just stay focused. Protect your kids with the truth. I nodded, though my legs still felt unsteady. After she left, I sat alone in the car, letting the weight of the morning settle. Then my phone buzzed. A text. From an unknown number. This isn't over. Jason. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Catherine without hesitation. Then I blocked his number. Whatever twisted game he and my ex were playing, I was done sitting back. My children needed someone to stand up for them, and I would be that person. The drive home felt different, like the road ahead was finally mine to take back. The weight that had crushed my chest for weeks had lifted slightly, replaced by something sturdier. Resolve. I had 3 days until my next scheduled time with the kids. 3 days to prepare for whatever my ex might try next. As I pulled into the driveway, Mrs. Hahn was watering her garden. She gave me a wave and I returned it, feeling for the first time in weeks something like normal. Inside, the silence of the house wrapped around me. Toys waited for small hands. Books lined the shelf, waiting to be read aloud at bedtime. The fridge was still covered with drawings and scribbled notes from happier times. This was only the beginning. The real battle was still ahead, navigating the custody evaluation, uncovering Jason's behavior, and unlearning the fear and confusion Dr. Lauren had planted in my children's minds. But now, I had hope. I opened my laptop and began typing out everything I could remember from the hearing while it was still fresh. Catherine had taught me well. Document everything. As I typed, I thought of my children likely sitting at school right then, carrying a burden no child should have to. Secrets, lies, doubt. Soon, I promised them silently. You won't have to pretend anymore. 3 days later, the court-appointed custody evaluator arrived. Dr. Margaret Thompson, mid-60s, no-nonsense demeanor, and eyes that said she'd seen every kind of parent imaginable. She walked through the house with a tablet in hand, making quiet notes while I followed nervously behind her. She examined the kids' bedroom, opened drawers and closets, checked the fridge and pantry, inspected the safety locks and smoke detectors. Her questions were pointed and occasionally personal about my work, my childcare plan, my support system, my dating life, even my future plans for the kids' schooling. I answered honestly, showing her the shared calendar I used to track every school event, appointment, and extracurricular. She nodded at intervals but never revealed what she was thinking. 2 hours later, she left. I felt hollowed out. Catherine called to check in. She'll be doing the same review at your ex's place, she reminded me. She'll also interview the kids one-on-one. Be patient. The waiting is brutal, but don't reach out unless it's through the app. That same afternoon, I received a message from my ex through the co-parenting app. The kids supposedly had dentist appointments that weekend and wouldn't be available until Sunday. I forwarded it to Catherine right away. Her reply was swift. She filed a motion within the hour, citing the judge's temporary order no medical appointments without mutual consent. Just like that, my ex messaged again, claiming she'd gotten the dates mixed up. A simple mistake. Friday arrived, my usual 4 p.m. pickup time. I sat in my car outside their house, watching the minutes crawl by. 4 Augu came and went. No kids. I sent a message through the app. No reply. By 4:30, I walked up and knocked on the door. My ex opened it wearing a carefully constructed look of surprise. "Oh, they're at a friend's birthday party," she said sweetly. "I must have forgotten to tell you." I asked for the address. "I'll check and get back to you," she said before shutting the door. I went back to my car and documented everything, just like Catherine said. Don't lose your temper. Don't give them ammunition. An hour later, the door finally opened again. My children stepped out slowly. My daughter clung to her brother's hand. Neither of them spoke. The drive home was silent. Jake stared out the window. My daughter held her backpack in her lap like it might float her away from this entire situation. At home, they bypassed the usual weekend chatter and headed straight to their room. I cooked their favorite dinner, hoping to lighten the mood. They picked at their food, exchanging glances that broke my heart. When I asked about school, I got one-word answers. When I suggested a movie, they shook their heads. Later that night, I heard muffled crying. I found Jake curled up beside his sister, both of them trembling under the blanket. I sat down on the floor, close but not too close, just there. Eventually, my daughter whispered, "Doctor, Lauren said you might try to steal us away forever." I swallowed back the lump in my throat and spent the next hour explaining everything, how custody worked, how courts made decisions, how they would never be taken from either parent without real cause. Slowly, their breathing evened out. They fell asleep, still holding hands. Saturday morning came with a new challenge. Neither of them wanted breakfast. "My stomach hurts," Jake mumbled. My daughter just nodded. I checked their temperatures normal. Still, I let them rest, kept them hydrated, sat with them quietly. By midday, they seemed a bit better. They sat on the rug playing with Legos. Then my daughter looked up suddenly and asked, "Will Uncle Jason be mad that we're here?" The question hit like a punch to the chest. I kept my voice steady and neutral. "Why do you think Uncle Jason would be mad?" I asked gently. My daughter looked down. "He said you're trying to break up our family." And I wrote down every word in my notebook later that night, cataloging it alongside everything else. My face remained calm in the moment, but inside, fury surged. Jason was turning my own children against me, poisoning their hearts with lies. But reacting emotionally would only validate their fears, just as he intended. Instead, I reassured them softly, Sometimes adults disagree, I said. But that's never a child's fault. Small victories followed. By Sunday morning, the kids were eating again, even giggling during cartoons. Their walls didn't drop entirely, but cracks were showing, cracks I could gently reach through. Then, as pickup time approached, the anxiety returned like a fog. They packed slowly, double-checking their bags again and again. When my ex arrived, Jason was in the passenger seat. They didn't get out, but I could see both of them watching. The kids gave me quick, stiff hugs before sprinting to the car. Jason didn't break eye contact. His smirk was back. On Monday, I got a call I hadn't expected. It was the school counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez. She said she'd noticed behavioral changes in both kids, higher anxiety, difficulty focusing, and Jake had even started lying about minor things. She asked to schedule a meeting. I agreed immediately, then contacted Catherine. "This is third-party verification," she said. "Ask the counselor to document everything formally for the custody evaluation." The meeting was eye-opening. Mrs. Rodriguez had worked with my kids for over 3 years. She spoke of how lively and social they used to be, Jake cracking jokes, my daughter always leading her little group of friends. That had shifted. Jake was now having occasional bathroom accidents. My daughter had become withdrawn, often opting out of recess or group activities. She asked careful, open-ended questions about what might have changed at home. I kept my answers focused and factual, outlined the custody arrangement, the ongoing evaluation, and what little I knew about the therapy sessions. She took detailed notes and assured me she'd keep a close eye. Driving home, my phone rang through the car's Bluetooth, unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Landon, this is Dr. Margaret Thompson." The custody evaluator. She had a few follow-up questions about the kids' routines. It started simple bedtime, activities, school performance. But then she asked about piano lessons. I explained everything, the false claims about piano, how I discovered the money was actually being funneled into unauthorized therapy sessions. She hummed thoughtfully and asked if I could send her documentation. I promised to forward it that evening. After the call, suspicion crept in. Why ask about piano specifically? Had my ex told her a different version? Catherine's advice echoed in my mind. Stick to the truth. Trust the process. The Tuesday arrived, another therapy day. On my way home from work, I adjusted my route to pass by Dr. Lauren's office again. This time, Jason's car was there too. I parked at a distance and discreetly took photos of his vehicle. Proof he was present during the children's sessions. That evening, I received a letter from my ex's attorney through the co-parenting app. They were requesting a modification to the pickup schedule, citing harassment and stalking behavior because I had driven past the therapy office. My stomach dropped. How did they know? I called Catherine immediately. "They're watching you," she said flatly, "while accusing you of stalking. I'm filing a response tonight. Public roads aren't private property." Wednesday brought an unexpected twist. A former coworker called me out of the blue. "I ran into Jason at a bar," he said. "He was bragging about his new girlfriend with 2 kids, said you were a deadbeat dad who abandoned them. He said it didn't sit right with him." He knew me, knew that wasn't the story. I thanked him and sent the details to Catherine. She added it to our growing file on Jason's involvement and character. Something about Jason's behavior nagged at me, how bold he'd gotten. The text he sent after court. "This isn't over." Why leave a trail when he'd been so careful before? Was he getting overconfident or desperate? Thursday was unsettlingly quiet. No filings, no texts, no emails. I used the time to organize everything, creating a detailed timeline of events, from the therapy charges, the recorded calls, the missed pickups, to the sudden allergies. It all pointed to one thing: systematic alienation, designed to fracture the bond between me and my children. Friday's pickup started differently. This time, the kids came out right on time, but my ex walked with them to the car, handing me a bag of medication. "Jake has allergies now," she said. "He needs special food too. We saw a doctor last week." Another medical decision I hadn't been notified about. I accepted the bag calmly, thanked her, and photographed everything: labels, prescriptions, even the timestamp on the pharmacy receipt. Every action was documented, every move watched. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready. In the car, Jake leaned back in his seat and told me quietly, "I feel fine. I don't know why I need this medicine." My daughter chimed in, saying the doctor they'd seen had asked a lot of questions about our house and whether they felt safe. Another medical visit, another professional involved without my knowledge or consent. Catherine was already compiling an airtight case around repeated violations of joint legal custody. Every one of my ex's oversteps was being documented, and each piece would be presented to the court in due time. The weekend began on a more hopeful note. The kids seemed less guarded, even asking if we could go to the park. Saturday morning, we fed ducks and played on the swings. Around us, other families laughed and relaxed, people living ordinary, uncomplicated lives. It felt like a glimpse of what we used to have. Then I noticed a familiar vehicle parked across the lot. Jason, watching us from a distance. I didn't acknowledge him, didn't break rhythm. I simply continued pushing my daughter on the swing, then later snapped a few discreet photos with my phone. His presence was being documented now, just like everything else. When we got home, I reviewed the pictures. In one, Jason was clearly on his phone, likely updating my ex, reporting our every move. The surveillance never stopped. They wanted to provoke me, to bait me into losing control. Saturday night, the kids asked to call their mom. I said yes, of course, but stayed nearby as they spoke. I listened as my daughter recited what we'd eaten, what we'd watched, what activities we did. It sounded memorized, like she was reading from a checklist. After the call, Jake looked uneasy. He finally said it. "Mom told us to remember everything. She said to tell her if you talked bad about her or Jason." I reassured them, gently but clearly. "You don't have to report on anything. This is your home too. You're not in the middle. You're just kids." But the truth was, they were in the middle, used as informants in a custody war they never asked for, their loyalty weaponized, their innocence eroded. Sunday morning, I got another call from Dr. Thompson. She wanted to schedule individual interviews with the children at a neutral location. We settled on Wednesday at her office. The kids would miss some school, but this was more important. I informed my ex via the co-parenting app, per court order. Her response came back fast and hostile. She accused me of manipulating the process, trying to steer the evaluator. I sent the exchange to Catherine. Her reply was simple: "Let her bury herself. Don't respond. Just document." That Sunday's pickup turned into a circus. My ex showed up nearly an hour early, banging on the front door while the kids were still finishing lunch. I didn't rush. I calmly helped them clean up, just like any other day. When I finally opened the door, she had her phone up, recording. "You're withholding the children," she snapped. "This is a violation." I pointed out she was 40 minutes early and asked her to wait until the scheduled time. She kept recording, asking leading questions, trying to spark a reaction. Jason appeared behind her, stepping forward with an aggressive posture. I stood my ground, hands clearly visible, voice calm and measured. The kids peeked out from the hallway, wide-eyed and frightened. This was the very thing they didn't need to witness. When the clock hit the proper time, I walked the kids out to the car. They were crying, apologizing. "Sorry for causing trouble," Jake whispered. I knelt beside them and said what I always say. "You didn't cause anything. It's not your fault. I love you." Then, I watched them drive away once again, in the care of two adults actively working to unravel their sense of safety. On Monday, I received the police welfare check report in the mail. As Catherine had predicted, it was entirely favorable. The officer's notes confirmed a safe, appropriate, and stable home environment. One more piece of the puzzle falling into place. I also received a bill from the dentist my ex had taken the kids to. The cost was steep and insurance had been billed under my name. Another violation, another unsanctioned medical appointment. Catherine added it to the file. Tuesday afternoon brought better news. Catherine called with an update. Dr. Thompson had completed interviews with my ex and Jason. "Apparently, it didn't go well," Catherine said. "Jason dodged questions about when his relationship started. Your ex contradicted herself about when therapy began and how it was arranged. Even better, Dr. Thompson had officially requested all of Dr. Lauren's therapy notes. This is huge," Catherine said. "If there's documentation of coaching, we'll have it. If there isn't, Dr. Lauren will have to admit she has no records, meaning she fabricated everything. Either way, it blows this wide open. That evening, I prepared for the kids' interviews with Dr. Thompson. I wrote down things I wanted to remember: appointment time, instructions, things to bring, but I was careful. No coaching, no leading. They'd been manipulated enough already. The truth had to be enough. Wednesday morning came gray and rainy. I picked the kids up from school and explained gently that they had an important appointment with a very kind lady who just wanted to hear their side of things. They didn't ask questions. They just nodded quietly. They were already carrying too much to be surprised. They seemed relieved to be missing class, but were visibly nervous about speaking to another adult in a doctor's office. Dr. Thompson's workspace, however, was designed with children in mind: bright furniture, friendly toys, books, and soft lighting. It didn't feel like a courtroom or a hospital. She met with each of them one-on-one while I waited in the lobby, unable to concentrate on the magazine in my lap. Jake went in first, an hour, then my daughter, about 45 minutes. When they came out, both looked tired, but not upset. Dr. Thompson thanked me with professional politeness, offering no clues about what she'd observed. In the car, the kids said she'd asked about our routines, both homes, how they felt about things. "Nothing scary," Jake said. My daughter nodded, quieter than usual but calm. I dropped them off at school with extra hugs. They seemed lighter somehow, like finally being able to tell their story to someone neutral had lifted a weight. I hoped Dr. Thompson had seen through the emotional fog they'd been forced to live in. I hoped she saw the truth. Thursday arrived with another stunt. My ex filed for an emergency hearing, accusing me of violating the court order by interrogating the kids about therapy. Her claim? The kids told her about the questions Dr. Thompson had asked. Catherine actually laughed, reading the motion. "She's flailing," she said. "The court ordered the evaluation, not you. This only hurts her credibility." Friday's pickup surprised me. No drama, no delays. The kids came out smiling, genuine smiles, the first in a while. As we drove, my daughter mentioned that Jason hadn't been around all week and that their mom had been crying a lot. "The house feels different," she said quietly. I didn't react visibly, but inside, my thoughts raced. Maybe the pressure was starting to fracture their dynamic. Jason was a charming fixture when things were easy, but legal scrutiny and mounting exposure might be pushing him toward the exit. The weekend was peaceful. We baked cookies, built a blanket fort in the living room, watched movies. Just normal, simple joy. I found myself memorizing every detail: Jake's laugh, my daughter's concentration as she piped frosting, the way they leaned into me during movie night. I stored it all away like treasure, just in case. Saturday night, Jake had a nightmare. He dreamed of standing in a room with two doors, his mom behind one, me behind the other, and no way to choose. He sobbed in my arms, torn by a battle he had no part in starting. Sunday morning, while the kids played outside, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of my car at the park the previous weekend, with a warning: "Stop stalking Jason." I took a screenshot and sent it straight to Catherine. "Witness intimidation," she replied. "He's slipping. File a police report, we'll make this official." As the Sunday exchange approached, I braced myself. But something had shifted. My ex came alone. No Jason. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't speak, didn't make eye contact, just stood by her car with her arms crossed. The kids hugged me like they used to, not the robotic, performative goodbyes I'd come to expect. When they climbed into the car, my ex finally looked at me. For a split second, there was something like regret in her expression. But then it vanished, replaced by the cold detachment I'd seen for months. They drove off in silence. Monday morning, Catherine called early. Dr. Thompson submitted her preliminary report. The full evaluation will take longer, but she's already flagged urgent concerns, specifically about the children's emotional state and the therapy sessions with Dr. Lauren. The judge had scheduled a hearing for Thursday to address the violations of joint legal custody and the unauthorized medical decisions. "This is good," Catherine said, "but be ready. We don't know what tricks they'll try next." That evening, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by binders and files, bank statements, email screenshots, therapist invoices, school counselor notes, photos, medical bills, text messages. Laid out chronologically, the story was clear. parental alienation, emotional manipulation, and a campaign to sever my bond with my children. Would it be enough? Tuesday, I spotted Jason's car across from my office, just sitting there. I snapped a photo and ignored him, let him waste his time. I had bigger things to focus on. That afternoon, Mrs. Rodriguez, the school counselor, called again. She said both kids had shown noticeable improvement, more engaged in class, playing with friends again. Something shifted, she said. I mentioned the court-ordered custody evaluation. She offered to provide a statement if needed. Wednesday arrived with a sense of quiet before impact. I worked late, trying to keep my mind busy. That night, Catherine called one last time to go over our strategy. We reviewed every piece of evidence, every misstep by my ex, every threat from Jason, every lie that could now be proven. Tomorrow, we'd return to court, but this time, the truth was on record. They seemed relieved to be missing class, but were visibly nervous about speaking to another adult in a doctor's office. Dr. Thompson's workspace, however, was designed with children in mind-bright furniture, friendly toys, books, and soft lighting. It didn't feel like a courtroom or a hospital. She met with each of them one-on-one while I waited in the lobby, unable to concentrate on the magazine in my lap. Jake went in first an hour, then my daughter about 45 minutes. When they came out, both looked tired, but not upset. Dr. Thompson thanked me with professional politeness, offering no clues about what she'd observed. In the car, the kids said she'd asked about our routines, both homes, how they felt about things. "Nothing scary," Jake said. My daughter nodded, quieter than usual, but calm. I dropped them off at school with extra hugs. They seemed lighter somehow, like finally being able to tell their story to someone neutral had lifted a weight. I hoped Dr. Thompson had seen through the emotional fog they'd been forced to live in. I hoped she saw the truth. Thursday arrived with another stunt. My ex filed for an emergency hearing, accusing me of violating the court order by interrogating the kids about therapy. Her claim? The kids told her about the questions Dr. Thompson had asked. Catherine actually laughed reading the motion. "She's flailing," she said. "The court ordered the evaluation, not you. This only hurts her credibility." Friday's pickup surprised me. No drama, no delays. The kids came out smiling, genuine smiles, the first in a while. As we drove, my daughter mentioned that Jason hadn't been around all week and that their mom had been crying a lot. "The house feels different," she said quietly. I didn't react visibly, but inside my thoughts raced. Maybe the pressure was starting to fracture their dynamic. Jason was a charming fixture when things were easy, but legal scrutiny and mounting exposure might be pushing him toward the exit. The weekend was peaceful. We baked cookies, built a blanket fort in the living room, watched movies. Just normal, simple joy. I found myself memorizing every detail. Jake's laugh, my daughter's concentration as she piped frosting, the way they leaned into me during movie night. I stored it all away like treasure just in case. Saturday night, Jake had a nightmare. He dreamed of standing in a room with two doors, his mom behind one, me behind the other, and no way to choose. He sobbed in my arms, torn by a battle he had no part in starting. Sunday morning, while the kids played outside, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of my car at the park the previous weekend, with a warning, "Stop stalking Jason." I took a screenshot and sent it straight to Catherine. "Witness intimidation," she replied. "He's slipping. File a police report. We'll make this official." As the Sunday exchange approached, I braced myself, but something had shifted. My ex came alone. No Jason. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't speak, didn't make eye contact, just stood by her car with her arms crossed. The kids hugged me like they used to, not the robotic, performative goodbyes I'd come to expect. When they climbed into the car, my ex finally looked at me. For a split second, there was something like regret in her expression. But then it vanished, replaced by the cold detachment I'd seen for months. They drove off in silence. Monday morning, Catherine called early. Dr. Thompson submitted her preliminary report. The full evaluation will take longer, but she's already flagged urgent concerns, specifically about the children's emotional state and the therapy sessions with Dr. Lauren. The judge had scheduled a hearing for Thursday to address the violations of joint legal custody and the unauthorized medical decisions. "This is good," Catherine said, "but be ready. We don't know what tricks they'll try next. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by binders and files, bank statements, emails, screenshots, therapist invoices, school counselor notes, photos, medical bills, text messages. Laid out chronologically, the story was clear: parental alienation, emotional manipulation, and a campaign to sever my bond with my children. Would it be enough? Tuesday, I spotted Jason's car across from my office, just sitting there. I snapped a photo and ignored him, let him waste his time. I had bigger things to focus on. That afternoon, Mrs. Rodriguez, the school counselor, called again. She said both kids had shown noticeable improvement, more engaged in class, playing with friends again. Something's shifted, she said. I mentioned the court-ordered custody evaluation. She offered to provide a statement if needed. Wednesday arrived with a sense of quiet before impact. I worked late, trying to keep my mind busy. That night, Catherine called one last time to go over our strategy. We reviewed every piece of evidence, every misstep by my ex, every threat from Jason, every lie that could now be proven. Tomorrow, we'd return to court. But this time, the truth was on record. Stay calm. Answer directly. Let the evidence speak. That night, I stood in my children's empty room, staring at the drawings taped to the walls. Bright crayon depictions of family, but something had changed. Recent ones showed 3 figures instead of 4. Sometimes Jason was there, sometimes he wasn't. Sometimes I was gone entirely. The confusion etched into their art made my chest ache. Thursday morning dawned crisp and cold. I couldn't stop thinking, why does Jason keep showing up everywhere like he's got nothing better to do? The park, the office, just sitting there in his car, watching. If he had a real job, would he really have time to play amateur spy every week? I put on my best suit, gathered my carefully organized files, and drove to Catherine's office. We reviewed our strategy one final time. She was confident, but she reminded me that family court doesn't always follow logic. Still, we had facts, we had documentation, we had momentum. At the courthouse, we saw my ex, her lawyer, and Jason. But something was off. They weren't seated together. Jason was several chairs away, avoiding eye contact. My ex kept glancing at her phone, visibly distracted. Catherine leaned over and whispered, "Something's changed. Looks like cracks are forming." Maybe the pressure had finally hit home. Maybe Jason wasn't prepared for this level of exposure. Maybe my ex was beginning to understand the cost of what she'd done, not just to me, but to her children. We took our seats at the respondents' table. Judge Patterson entered, stern and focused as she reviewed the thick stack of documents before her. The bailiff called the room to order, and I straightened, pulse steady but fast. This hearing mattered. The custody evaluator's findings, the coaching, the unauthorized medical decisions, all of it would be addressed today. Whatever came next, this was the moment everything turned. As Judge Patterson began to speak, I pictured Jake and my daughter at school carrying burdens far too heavy for their small shoulders. Soon, I promised them silently, soon this will be over. Her first words quickened my heartbeat. She had reviewed Dr. Thompson's preliminary report and had serious concerns about the children's well-being. Then she looked straight at my ex's table. The shift was real. Her voice rang with measured authority as she listed the evaluator's findings. Repeated signs of coaching, rehearsed statements, visible anxiety tied to certain questions and subjects. Each line felt like a hammer pounding away at the false narrative that had been built against me. My ex turned toward her lawyer, whispering rapidly. Jason sat motionless, hands in his lap, no longer scrolling through his phone. Catherine rose and presented the evidence we'd assembled: medical appointments conducted without my knowledge or consent, prescription medication issued for conditions that didn't exist, Jason's confirmed presence at therapy sessions despite having no legal standing. She laid it out methodically, calmly, like constructing a house brick by brick, and with every brick, the story of alienation became harder to deny. The opposing attorney tried to push back, objecting multiple times, but Judge Patterson wasn't having it. When she claimed the therapy was vital for the children's emotional health, the judge interrupted her. "Do you have documentation of trauma or behavioral concerns predating these therapy sessions?" There was silence. Then, reluctantly, "No, Your Honor." The judge called Dr. Sarah Winters to the stand. She approached with a forced smile and a nervous shuffle, nothing like the confident presence from her website and social media profiles. Under oath, she admitted there were no documented disclosures of abuse. Her notes were vague, mostly descriptions of memory exercises designed to help the children access repressed trauma. When asked about her personal connection to my ex, she dodged, then hesitated, then stumbled through a weak explanation that satisfied no one. Judge Patterson's eyes narrowed. As a licensed professional, you are bound by ethical standards. Are you familiar with the requirements around dual relationships and conflicts of interest? Dr. Winters muttered a response, but it was too late. The damage was done. The judge dismissed her, and she left the stand quickly, avoiding eye contact with anyone as she exited. Then came Jason's turn. He strode to the witness box with artificial confidence, but Catherine didn't even flinch. She calmly introduced the subpoenaed records, his own social media posts, timestamps, text messages. They established a clear timeline. His romantic involvement with my ex had begun months before she filed for custody modifications. When questioned about his involvement with my kids, Jason claimed he just wanted to be a positive male figure. Catherine pounced. Were you ever instructed to supervise the children by a legal authority? No. Did you ever attend therapy sessions with them? Sometimes, but just to be supportive. Did you notify the children's father that you would be present? I didn't think I needed to. Judge Patterson interjected. Mr. Larson, did you ever consider that your unsanctioned presence at medical sessions might be inappropriate, particularly given the contested nature of this custody case? Jason shifted uncomfortably. I was just trying to help. But the smirk he'd worn for weeks was gone. His answers were vague, defensive, hollow. And the courtroom finally saw what we had seen all along. Catherine presented the text message where Jason had told me that the custody papers were for the best. As she read it aloud, his expression twisted. He tried to spin it as concern for the kids, but his explanation landed flat. The courtroom saw through him. Next came Mrs. Rodriguez, the school counselor, testifying via video. She described the stark behavioral changes in both children, Jake's regression with bathroom habits, my daughter's emotional withdrawal, the physical symptoms of anxiety. Her professional opinion was clear. The children were under significant emotional stress due to ongoing adult conflict. Then my ex took the stand. Her attorney tried to portray her as a devoted mother, just trying to protect her children. But piece by piece, that image unraveled. When confronted with the recording of the kids explaining how they'd been coached, she accused me of manipulating them. When shown the unauthorized medical bills, she claimed she'd simply forgotten to notify me. Each excuse sounded thinner than the last, and the judge wasn't buying any of it. Judge Patterson called a brief recess. My ex and her attorney huddled at their table in whispered argument. Jason had already left the courtroom by then. Apparently his loyalty had limits. When we reconvened, the judge's ruling came swiftly. The temporary orders were modified on the spot. My standard custody schedule was reinstated, no supervision required. All therapy for the children would be immediately halted unless provided by a court-approved professional with no ties to either parent. More than that, my ex was ordered to cover my legal fees from the frivolous emergency motion. But the most significant outcome came next. Judge Patterson ordered a full review of the custody arrangement. She cited serious concerns about my ex's judgment and the psychological harm caused to the children. A guardian ad litem would be appointed to represent the children's best interests moving forward. As we exited the courtroom, my ex avoided looking at me. Her lawyer muttered something about an appeal, but we all knew there was no salvaging what had been exposed. Catherine walked me to my car, her expression steady but serious. This is just one battle, she reminded me, but it's an important one. You did everything right. That afternoon, I picked up my children from school on time like before. They looked confused at first, unsure what to expect. But when I explained that everything was going back to normal, that they'd be staying with me for our regular schedule, something shifted. No more supervised visits, no more Dr. Lauren, no more lies. The weekend felt lighter. They were still cautious, still processing, but it was different. Jake unpacked his things completely for the first time in months. My daughter lined up her stuffed animals on her bed with quiet care. Jake asked if we could finish his Lego set together. Saturday morning, we made pancakes. The kitchen turned into a flower storm, but their laughter still rusty filled the room like sunlight. We spent the day being a family, reading books, playing board games, going to the park. No Jason watching from the lot, no staged calls to their mom. That night, Jake crawled into my lap and whispered, "Am I in trouble for telling the truth to Dr. Thompson?" I held him close. Telling the truth is never wrong. Grown-ups should never ask kids to lie. He nodded solemnly, then asked if we could have pizza tomorrow. That simple, innocent request hit me harder than I expected. Normal. That's all he wanted. Sunday's exchange was quiet. My ex arrived alone and stayed in the car. No glares, no phone cameras. The kids hugged me like it was the most natural thing in the world and said, "See you Wednesday." Then they got into the car, calm and drama-free. It wasn't a miracle, but it was progress. The weeks that followed brought slow but meaningful change. The guardian ad litem met with the children, observing them in both homes. Her preliminary findings mirrored Dr. Thompson's. The kids were noticeably more relaxed and authentic in my care. Visits with their mother still showed signs of tension and guarded behavior. Jason vanished entirely. I only checked my ex's social media for documentation, and there was no sign of him anymore. The kids mentioned that Mom seemed sad, but they weren't being interrogated about their time with her anymore. That chapter was closing. As for Dr. Lauren Catherine filed a formal ethics complaint with extensive evidence. The licensing board launched an investigation. It would take time, but the fact that she had treated children while being personally connected to one parent was damning. And the kids. They began to heal. Jake's accidents stopped. My daughter rejoined her friends at recess. Their smiles came easier. Their trust returned, little by little. We weren't done yet, but for the first time in a long time, we were finally moving forward. Their teachers began reporting better focus and increased participation. Mrs. Rodriguez continued sending periodic updates, each one noting steady progress. 3 months after the hearing, Dr. Thompson's final custody evaluation was completed. Her report laid everything bare: the pattern of systematic alienation, the psychological toll it had taken on the children, and clear recommendations for moving forward. Primary custody was granted to me. My ex was allowed supervised visitation only until she completed both a parenting course and individual therapy. The transition wasn't easy. The kids struggled with guilt over their mother's limited role in their lives. They worried about her being alone, about what they couldn't fix. I found a therapist with no ties to either side, someone who specialized in helping children navigate fractured family systems. Slowly, with gentle guidance, they began to process their experiences. At first, my ex resisted the new arrangement. She filed multiple motions, all of which were quickly dismissed. But over time, she seemed to accept the new reality. Her supervised visits were tense in the beginning. Stilted conversations, awkward silences, but she gradually learned how to interact with the kids without probing or dragging them into adult matters. 6 months later, a new normal had taken hold. The kids came home to my house after school every day. We had a rhythm now: weeknight routines, inside jokes, bedtime stories. They still saw their mom, now unsupervised after she met the court's conditions, but the power dynamic had shifted. Jake no longer flinched when I raised my hand for a high five. My daughter started calling me Dad again without hesitation, without fear. They stopped watching their words, stopped bracing for consequences that never came. They had room to breathe again. One night, as I was tucking them into bed, my daughter asked, "Are you still sad about Uncle Jason?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Sometimes people we care about let us down," I said. "That doesn't mean we stop caring. And it definitely doesn't mean we stop trusting." She nodded, thoughtful, then grinned. "Can we get a dog?" Jake immediately chimed in. "Please?" I laughed. "We'll talk about it." As I turned off their light, I realized something simple and profound. We'd made it. Not untouched, not without scars. But we were here together, stronger and free. The legal battles had mostly ended, the chaos had quieted. Now we were just a family again, a father and his children, figuring life out one day at a time. It wasn't perfect. Some days were still hard. There were still questions I struggled to answer about divorce, loyalty, and why people change. But we were healing, and the truth, finally, had won. The kids were allowed to love both parents now. They didn't have to be messengers or spies. They could simply be children. The foundation Jason and my ex had tried to undermine had held. In fact, it was stronger for having been tested. I closed their door softly and walked back to the kitchen to clean up after dinner. Tomorrow would bring more: permission slips to sign, homework to supervise, maybe another conversation I wasn't ready for. But tonight my kids were safe, laughing, honest, and that was enough. All right, that's everything for now. Thanks for sticking with me while I tried to make sense of this wild chapter. It's always easier to sort it out when you've got someone listening. Catch you in the next one.